Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. And it's live. I hit the button and it does things. Man, I can't wait to introduce everyone to the guest today. She is so much fun, and she is someone you need to know. How do I know this? Not only do I know her, but she was recognized as the top 10 women in marketing and comm that you should know. There it is. She was also a winner in a B2B category with Nielsen around the world. She's worked for brands such as Radiant 6, Billboard, Nielsen. You know, she is a marketing strategist, an entertainer, a DJ, and an all-around badass. Katie Morse, how you doing?
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, I'm stoked that you're here. And what people don't necessarily know is we actually were able to connect in the airport after our prep call. You were flying into New York. I was flying out. We just grabbed some dinner at LaGuardia, of all places.
I know. Way easier than meeting up in the city. But yeah, it was probably the most fun I've had in an airport in a while, because usually you're there and it's like security's annoying and then waiting's annoying, but you don't want to get there too early, but you don't want to get there too late. So you're just like sitting around, and instead we get to chat with friends, which is great.
I know. And normally if you're on a business trip, you don't know anybody. So you're just used to just being like, I'm going to put in a podcast, the Hardcore Marketing Podcast, and just go about my day. But no, you're here. So I'm stoked you're here. And the way we start off every show is we smash a myth. So what I'm going to do here, this is actually heavy. I'm going to pass you this thing. This is Thor's hammer.
Ooh.
Go ahead and take this brand new Thor's hammer and smash for me some kind of bogus marketing strategy, a myth, or just some misconception, something you need to clear up and just set marketing straight once and for all.
Yeah, so there's a few. When we were talking during the prep call, I think I kind of went off on quite a few tangents. So I'll try to summarize, and I'll actually start with the last one first, because I think it's actually the most kind of sinister and pervasive. But
yes.
First and foremost, I've worked for both B2B and B2C companies throughout my career. Sometimes they do both, right? We exist in a dual-sided marketplace, like Billboard, for example, even Nielsen, right? Because Nielsen needs consumer data to sell to clients. So sometimes they're reaching out to panelists, to survey takers, and things like that. So, B2B and B2C really tends to be where I play. And I always hear this when B2B marketers talk about marketing, is we talk about marketing like we're marketing to companies. And we're not. We're still marketing to people, just like B2C marketers are marketing to people. We might be wanting them to do different things, right? Sign up for a webinar or have a chat with a sales rep instead of maybe buy a pair of shoes. But fundamentally, we're still marketing to people. And I think B2B marketers, some of them get lost in the fact that these people happen to have jobs that work at companies. But fundamentally, we're just people looking to connect with other people on things that will improve our lives. So that's kind of myth number one, is like forgetting the humanity in B2B. And I think companies that do it well keep that top of mind.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess you can't really say anything to that. I mean, it's true. There are people. It's like it's not like an AI is buying the software at a company. And I guess people get thinking, well, I've got multiple decision makers, I've got recommenders, I've got all these other people.
Right. So you have more people. You're marketing to a lot of people to get a decision made. Maybe not just one. It's not, do I want that pair of shoes? And maybe would my husband and wife, because we share finances, approve of that purchase in our shared budget? Sure. It's like, do you approve? Does your sales guy approve? Does your boss approve? Does maybe the CEO of the company approve? But you are all still people.
Sure.
So that's kind of thing number one that I really don't like.
Why do you think people do that? How are we going down that? Like, how do we get there? What do we need to avoid to not do that?
I think part of it is sometimes it's just habit, right? I mean, we're approaching our markets not based purely on maybe demographics or psychographics, but also like company size, revenue. So like there's more that goes into defining our target audiences and target markets. And a lot of that is really like not people driven, right? Like I might work for a large global multinational corporation that makes, $10 billion in revenue. but I might just be in a different audience segment than someone who works for a small startup that's, maybe just, geographically limited to one country. So I think partially it's because of the data that we have to work with. And a
Yeah.
lot of that data really isn't people oriented, but then you start getting into things like buyer personas and you're straight back to people. But then we take Sally or buyer persona and still market to Sally as if Sally is like a faceless monolith, as if Sally doesn't have a personality, as if Sally, maybe she has challenges in her job. But I feel like even there, we don't go collectively in B2B as far as we do in B2C and making those challenges feel personal or making the solutions feel personal, for example.
Any recommendation, like if I'm not sure that maybe I've lost a little of my humanity in my marketing, like what do I do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of market research.
Okay.
Consumer insights is now what people tend to call, really, in my opinion, great marketing research groups. I mean, you want to know what your consumers think, what drives them, what their pain points are, what problems you're trying to solve, how your product or service will improve their lives. And that's the same again for B2B or B2C. So if you don't have someone to turn to, I'm always a fan of finding maybe a third party, an external consultant, a small agency or something like that that you can go to. But I'm a really big fan of, really just turning to your customers, even something like holding a focus group where you
Yeah.
pull in some of your top customers or pull in people that work at companies you're trying to reach and ask them the questions that are on your mind. Like ask them to, maybe review some marketing concepts you have, or talk to you just kind of qualitatively about what strikes their interest, what doesn't strike their interest. Because again, like people are different, we're unique. So even though you might have 15 Sallys or 15,000 Sallys in that buyer persona, like each of those different Sallys might react a bit differently. So I'm a big fan of, literally injecting people into the process and asking people what they think, or doing some market research to ascertain in a quantitative way what may have a better chance of success and why.
I like that. The focus group thing is interesting. I've never done one of those. Have you been in one or seen one or the
I
results of
haven't
one?
personally, no,
Yeah.
but definitely a lot of really great, colleagues of mine have run them. It's,
Interesting.
like one of those like marketing bucket list things where you're like, yeah, I'd really like to do one of these one day.
Yeah.
Like, I'd really like to do that type of campaign. For
Right.
me, it's like something super simple is like, I'd like to be in the room where there's a focus group. I mean, I've written the surveys for them, I've approved the surveys, but I've never been the person who's actually there. So, little marketing bucket list item of mine.
You know, if that isn't already there, we should make that real. Like
We should
marketing
just do a
bucket list.
focus group.
Yeah, yeah, but even marketing bucket list, like that's cool. So yeah, a focus group. Now I just want to do one to do one. That's
Well,
a
you
cool
could
idea.
you could do one with your clients.
Yeah. What about like you could do that virtual? Could you do like a Zoom? Or do you need
I
them
am
all
not the
there
market
eating
research
brownies?
expert. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good
I would
question.
I would actually go to a consultant and ask like what's the best way,
Yeah,
because I think for me at least part of it is having a sense of comfort in being able to share your opinions.
right.
And I just don't know what the research says about if that can effectively be done virtual or if it has to be in person.
It's a
I
good
would think there
question.
must be solutions in companies out there, but it's just not something I've dug into recently.
Yeah, my focus group has always kind of been like going out for dinner or drinks, and if you after doing an all nighter at Dreamforce with a client or two, then you're like, oh
Get
yeah, they
real
really
honest.
real honest, real human. The honesty is there. Good feedback, bad feedback, everything you need to hear. It's all
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Do you
Remind you,
take good notes during those focus group discussions?
yeah, but you got to write it down before you go to bed that night. Otherwise,
True.
you may not remember in the morning.
Very true.
Um, so okay, so we got to put the humanity back in there. I think that's a good, like a level set with everyone. Make sure you're doing this. Otherwise, all the other problems stem forth from it.
Yep. I would say myth number two really comes from my work
Smash.
in digital marketing. Like social media is not new, guys. I mean, Google turned 21 this year. Facebook is almost ready to be in college. I joined Facebook, what was it, 14 years ago? Yeah, 14 years ago. So Facebook's like officially a teenager and it's been around for a few more years than that because my school wasn't one of the first ones to be able to join. Like social media is not this new, shiny,
Yeah.
scary thing anymore. Like if you don't know how social media can add to your business and you think that it's a passing fad or you're maybe don't want to learn the ins and outs because you think that your buyers, again, putting the humanity back in B2B, like you think that like the people that you're marketing to aren't existing on social platforms
Right.
across all demographics, you're dead wrong. I mean,
Right.
Facebook, for example, let's use Facebook and Instagram. Yeah, Instagram gets the younger demographics, right? Gen Z and millennials. TikTok gets Gen Z. Facebook itself, less Gen Z and millennials compared to people like baby boomers. But really, the demographics only start to drop off around age 55 plus for Facebook. So if we're talking about demographics, like you have a wide swath of people, literally like 18 to 55, that are on these platforms. So for me, when I talk to people and there's, oh, like, so I don't want to, no, LinkedIn not so much, Facebook not so much, Twitter not so much,
Really?
like that's for younger people. Like I just want
Wow.
to use Thor's hammer all over that myth because
Oh man,
it's
smash
not
those
going
people.
anywhere. It's constantly evolving, so you need to keep up with the times if you're going to be a solid social media practitioner. But as business leaders, if you're just ignoring it because you think it's some new fad, like you are literally about a decade behind.
Yeah, it was some new fad 10 to 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Now it or more. So now you just really old school, I guess, at this point. You just are out of it. You're out of the race.
Yeah, I'd say like for me, what I classify as like new is really when companies started to pick up on it, which was like, let's call it 2007 to 2010 or 11.
Okay. Yep.
That was for me, like JetBlue, for example, started their Twitter account way back when. And you
Yeah.
had a lot of companies getting into it back then. I think Zappos is still a fantastic example of what can be done with customer service on social media. So you had these really great companies that were really investing in what they considered potentially this nascent platform, right? It might have come out of like their test and learn budget, but they tested, they learned, and a lot of them saw a lot of really great success. So I just think now, as we're heading into almost 2020, I mean, it's what, like 3 months away? I'm still having conversations about how new social media is. And it's with potentially legal teams, it's
Wow.
with, colleagues across different areas of business and different businesses I've worked in. It's with all sorts of people. So it seems to still be this pervasive belief. And I'm just constantly baffled.
How do you deal with that? I don't know if I could handle it in that conversation.
A lot of education.
Yeah.
I think bringing the real, it's like, hey, like if it's new, like how much time do you and your kids spend on Facebook? How much time do you spend on Twitter? How much do you hear Twitter on the news? How much do you spend on Instagram? Do you ever watch YouTube videos? Like talk to your family.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically also like with that, I think is still less so for some companies, but like we assume, especially for B2B, that we're marketing to people who are literally using a laptop, like I happen to be, but we exist on our mobile phones
We
and
do.
our tablets.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the two I hear, and maybe it's just how I receive what people are saying, but I hear it be kind of intertwined that like, oh, like mobile optimization, meh, let's worry about that
Yeah, right?
later. Social media, meh, let's worry about that later. And I'm like, but like literally, how do you live your day? And there's studies out there. Nielsen has some great ones, right? Where we're literally tracking how and where people spend their time. We're spending increasing amounts of time on devices, and we're
Right.
spending increasing amounts of time with media, including content and, for example, social media, the platforms in which you create and which you can consume content. So, I think for me that is also a big myth, and it's like, that kind of leads to a bunch of other stuff. Like it's been called, quote unquote, the pink ghetto, where if you work in social media, it tends to be a job that you can be the social media manager for 5 different companies, less so of a career path than other areas of digital marketing, which is something that I'm always a big believer in. As I'm building a team, as I'm working on with my team about career development paths, like if their job includes social, because mine at one point was exclusively social, and
Wow.
luckily at Nielsen I've been given the chance to broaden back up my wings because I've done more than social in my background. But it's something that I really try hard as a people leader to really bake in, is that you're not just stuck in this one little channel, because there are transferable skills. Because to be good at
Right.
social, you have to be able to write, you have to understand data, you have to be able to communicate with all sorts of different people, you have to have a thick skin, you have to be creative, and you have to have a constant sense of learning, because it's all evolving all the time. And
Right.
I think any other area of marketing, email, even communications and PR, would be lucky to have someone with that skill set. But you're considered the tweeter or the social media intern. So that's less of a career, more of a job.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, how does that get a seat at the table? You just need to prove the ROI, just start showing that It's
I mean,
effective?
potentially, I tend to think that as marketers, if we can prove ROI, that's as sure of a shot as you can get a seat at the table.
Yeah.
I was talking with someone recently, and they called marketing selling at scale, which is, I think, a really interesting way to talk about marketing. Because if it does provide a return on investment, then your area stops being just seen as a cost center and starts being a profit driver. And
Yeah.
what do you want to do with profit drivers? You want to invest more money in them and
Right.
increase the optimization. And there's a lot of positive focus from people who do have the seats at the table, like the CRO, Chief Revenue Officer, CFO, COO, CEO. If they start looking at you in a completely different context, that's really powerful. Sometimes it's really, for me, showing exactly the breadth of what social can do, that it's not just for driving ROI. It's not
Interesting.
just for community management. What is community management? Even defining that can get a bit fuzzy. It's not just for customer service. It's not just for this. It's kind of a jack and all trades. I always liken social to email. What do you use email for? Everything. Email
Right.
is a
Yeah.
Swiss Army knife, right? It can be a marketing tool. It can be customer service. It can help develop a better and stronger relationship with a client. Like, it really depends on how you use the platform. And I think for me, social is very much the same thing, but those are sometimes complicated conversations to have, and you have to know your audience. Sometimes, if I'm talking to like a chief salesperson or a chief revenue officer, they really care about the ROI and how marketing can either drive or close business.
Right.
So, cool. I'll talk to them about that first and foremost. They care less about customer service, for example, although they do care if they're the chief revenue officer because they want to
Hmm.
keep the revenue they've gained, which means they have to have happy customers.
Right.
So it is also about knowing your audience. But yeah, this pervasive belief that social is somehow still new or not like a fundamental part of everyone's marketing mix just kind of kills me every single time I hear it come up.
I guess knowing the way people are, we might still hear it 10 years from now, and then be like,
Totally.
get out of here.
Totally. I mean, I think it's like, for me, like, email marketing was at one point new, and now email marketing, some people kind of consider it old and boring. And I'm like, I would be happy if some people considered social old and boring one day, because to me, like, there are very few companies I know of that don't invest in email, right? So that would, to me, mean that social has passed that chasm of like being like a test and learn strategy,
Yeah.
and it now is fundamental. Like, give us old and boring, please.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess I don't know. It's almost boring, but it certainly is old. It just seems like almost like table stakes, in my mind. You just kind of, if you're
Depending
not
on your
on there
business.
chatting, somebody else is in
Yeah, depending on
your
your business.
place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's, I mean, that's a lot of the, not a lot of the pushback I hear, but it depends on the company, right?
Yeah.
Because again, like, we know, if you look at the data, you know that every single demographic is on some sort of social platform.
Yeah.
Your job is to figure out which ones you want to be on and you need to be on to reach the people you want to reach, the manner you want to reach them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's almost like we forget the people who are like 35 up exist on social media. Meanwhile, millennials are still older than 35. So if we're talking about the millennial generation, like, that includes the 35 to almost 40 now. But if you go, oh, well, our buyers aren't really active on social media because they're all in like their 40s or 50s. Yeah, they're still active. They might not post, but they have accounts.
Yeah.
They might, read email newsletters, subscribe to a podcast, attend to
Mm-hmm.
conferences, follow speakers, have a Twitter account that they just use to keep up with people. And sometimes they're not active, but sometimes people who are 18 to 25 aren't active, right? They don't think it adds to
Right.
their life. So I feel like we just apply these stereotypes and then direct our marketing strategy based on them without actually making sure that our stereotypes and our assumptions are data backed. Like, we're not checking ourselves.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like we have these stereotypes. Where does that come from? It's just a natural human bias that we have. We believe something's the case, and then we just roll with it. And then sometimes we see data and we kind of look at it in a way that supports how we already believe instead of
Yeah. Or you
really.
look at it and how many times have you gone like, huh, that's puzzling. And like, you've been surprised. And then it's like, I don't know what to do with that. Like, this
Right.
this doesn't back up anything I think.
Right.
And then, well, that's what the data shows. Why does it show that? And I think that's the question that we need to answer.
Right. More particularly, why that feedback? Why that result? I
Yeah.
tend to look at something if data comes back like that. It's like, something's wrong. We need to fix it. That
True.
can't
So
possibly
you're
be
more of a
true.
problem solver.
Yeah.
But it depends on what the data is. Maybe it's an opportunity instead of a problem that you need to solve, right?
Right. I once was at this agency where we were creating these landing pages for one of the clients, and there were these like very optimized, like graphical, sexy forms, like super short,
Mm-hmm.
ready to convert you, fantastic. And then on the actual site itself, got a lot of organic traffic. They had the original long 12,
Oh,
15 field form. Ugh, so gross. And they did this study because they were good at doing these little studies where they'd say, okay, well, the people we got from those. Oh, and so we drove PPC to the cool form that we had just
okay.
created, the
And
short
everything
one,
else went to the
and then yeah,
organic
the
site?
organic everything went to the long form. And they're like, well, you know what? The people that fill out the long form convert way more. So and they're like going off the deep end. Maybe we should make those short forms long, and we'll get better people. And it's like, oh no, don't like stop, pause. And then I went down to the sales floor. Went down to the sales floor
Mm-hmm.
and just sat with some sales reps and just was chilling with them. And then eventually started asking them some questions about the different kind of leads they were getting and responding to. Come to find out, no one had told them that there was a short form. And so they believed everyone had the ability to fill out a long form, but the people that filled the short one out chose to fill the short one out and
No
like
way.
didn't care. So like, man, I don't want to fill out everything. And then the
So I'm
people with
just
the
going to
long
give you like
form,
my name and email instead of like
yeah,
name, email, firstborn child,
what you
home
want to
address,
do, where you
social
want to
security
go.
number,
Yeah.
largest goal in life.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
also company size and title.
yeah, so they thought, and even like more details of like, oh, planning what you want to do and details about that. So they thought the ones that filled out the long form were better leads. And so they were cherry picking those, going for them, and they were leaving the PPC ones for later, if ever. And they
Of
figured
course.
they're bad leads, even though we'd spent like $15 a click and all, we spent
Right.
like lots of money to acquire them. They were letting them just sort of wither away because they thought these people were like subpar for not filling out the full form.
Wow.
And we
So
like
that was a
avoided
case of like,
tragedy.
yeah, like human bias affecting the
Yeah.
data results. Now, did you like commonly you'll have a short form that's the start of a campaign, and then you'll have a little bit of a drip. So you get, field 3, field 4, field 5. Like, were
Yeah.
they just getting past both forms simultaneously, or was there some sort of like drip campaign for the short form to append the additional information to equal the kind of breadth and depth of the
Sales would
long?
have to call them and find out that information on the
Okay.
call.
So no one, like marketing, had not bothered to talk to sales about how their process needed to change, right?
Or
Like
the
how
fact
many
that we're
times have
sending
you
two
seen
different
that
kinds of
happen though?
leads. I know. I know.
Yeah,
And I know. And I mean, I could even own that, but like no one had thought, oh, maybe we should let sales know that there's different kinds of leads coming through. But
right.
don't worry, if you don't see many fields, it's not their fault. We didn't give them the opportunity to fill out the fields.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And
And
this
how
is
did you guys
OG
fix
days
that,
too.
if you don't mind?
How do we
Like,
fix that?
did you just train your salespeople? Did you update the forms? Like, what was the action you took
Well,
after
we
you figured
definitely
that
did
out?
not add fields to that form. That would be like over my dead body. We're adding more fields to this form that are pointless. We eventually pared back the organic one as well to increase
Okay.
the conversions. But yeah, we had it was like, oh, well, the data says this. Let's do this. Kate. Like, no, I've refused. Like, give me a second
Pause.
to go find out. Pause.
Yeah.
Let's go see what's going on.
Yeah.
And this is even before the days of drips too. So it wasn't like there was an opportunity to nurture them to later get them to fill out a second form. At least not as easy as it is
Mm-hmm.
these days with programs that do it.
Yeah.
This was early in the day, even before. I mean, we had a landing page app. I don't know if you remember Live Ball, but it was like
Oh my
back in the
gosh.
day.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like cutting edge, but we didn't have email tied to it, so it was one of those things.
Boy, the days of the disconnected marketing tech stack, even
I
though
know.
today, like a lot of people still have very disconnected martech stacks,
Do
but that's
they? I kind of take it for granted that, I mean, they should be connected.
some people, it's a challenge. Which that kind of gets me into like, not to like totally take over or shift the subject, but like marketing myth 3, which I think is the
Oh,
biggest
please do.
one.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Smash.
So for me, I think this is the one that's a little bit more insidious and pervasive because I
Mhm.
don't think it has like one major cause. But for me, the fear that's included in by marketers about marketing, to me, that's sometimes like a death knell for great marketing from a company. And I think fear can have a number of causes, right? Maybe it's um, fear of, not being seen as a top performer if you suggest something that maybe doesn't perform as well as you'd like it, right? So like fear
Yeah.
of trying something new and the repercussions.
Sure.
It could be ego driven, where maybe you just like know that this isn't an area that you know really well. And if people are investing in this area, they might take away from your area. And like that makes you a bit uncomfortable. So that's a little bit more like, kind of personal.
Yeah.
Maybe it's genuinely, and I'll kind of go back to like the the fear of like trying something new, but like a culture, like a larger culture of fear and like wanting to always play things safe. And like I'm all for incremental improvements. I think that's a fantastic path toward like great optimization,
Yeah.
but you can't have incremental improvements if that's like the only type of improvement you make,
Oh, yeah.
because then you're just kind of like inching yourselves forward, and you might be in a situation, depending on your market, where your competitors are taking leaps and bounds because they're trying something new. There's also like, in a larger aspect, and this is again kind of going back to the company, like fear of standing for who you are, right? Like almost
Mm-hmm.
fear of doubling down on what your company does, what your key value propositions are, what your position in the market is, why people need to use you. Like fear of really like owning your own persona and your own voice from like a corporate standpoint. It could also be leadership. I mean, how many times have we all either worked for people or worked with people who just didn't seem to care about the specifics of what we do, no matter what part of the business we work in, and they just want a simple answer. And sometimes it's like, I can give you an answer, but it's not simple. And I would like to
Mm.
explain this answer. And it's like, nope, no, no. I just need the one answer. I don't care about the rest of it. It's like,
Wow.
but the rest of it's really important. Like, this is why it's so like, this is the meat and potatoes. And like, I'm just giving you like the appetizer. Like, I want to like at least like show you the plate, and then like you can
Right.
decide if you want to, have some of the meat and potatoes or not. So I think for me, fear is something that tends to hold people back, both in their own careers, from like going for that job that you think
Mm.
you can do, but maybe it has a higher title or it's a little bit of a stretch. So you're not even going to put in your application for it, right? Fear of career development because, oh my God, I've got to learn all these new things and it's a lot of work and maybe I don't have time, or maybe I'm unsure like where I should spend my time, or I'm unsure how this would reflect. Like, will it make me seem less into my current role if I start learning other things? Will it make me seem like I'm a less satisfied employee? It can affect our campaigns, where maybe we have three really great ideas from either our internal creative department or maybe an agency partner, and we choose the one that's, just kind of safe, that like we know it'll return results, but we don't really want to go with like the stretch campaign. Um, it can affect even how you put your marketing budget together. I keep mentioning like a test and learn type of budget. I'm a big proponent of reserving part of your marketing budget always to test and learn. That way, it's not this special thing that you need to get approval for every single time you do it. It's baked into how you do business. It's another
Ah.
question you're going to answer, like, how are we going to use these funds? What are we going to test next? What are we going to tinker with next? What are we going to try next? Um, and again, I think if you're just like working on incremental and inching forward, you're going to end up, it's kind of like you're going to end up just the hare. I know the hare eventually wins the race, or the turtle eventually wins the race, sorry, but you're just kind of going to plod along. And markets don't move in straight lines, nor do they plod
Yeah.
along. Sometimes there are sizable changes. And again, going back to social, if you put your eggs in one basket, for example, with social, what happens when these platforms change their algorithms and suddenly what you had the day before doesn't work? What happened when Google makes an update and suddenly what you had the day before doesn't work? So you need to change your whole strategy. If you're just improving on what you have, and again, like we don't know these things, very frustrating to have to talk to an executive to say like, literally yesterday this worked, today this doesn't. No, I had
Right.
no heads up. No, I don't have a reason as to why this was happening. I just have to deal with it, and here's how I think to deal with it. Like, that's not always a pleasant conversation to have when there's money at stake.
Sure.
But again, that's where, if you're always in an environment of testing and learning, you're having those conversations not because something broke and you need to fix it, or something happened that was out of your control and you need to pivot as a result, but you're having those conversations about new things you're doing and different ways you're thinking about things, and that you are always keeping your eyes on the wider picture. So I think for me, fear it holds people back in their careers. It holds company back. And it's really just this kind of insidious, pervasive thing that I would love to see companies be less fearful, and I would love to see marketers and marketing leaders be less fearful with how they approach their jobs.
That old Dune quote, "Fear is the mind slayer," or something like that. Yeah, fear, it just gets in there and it can kind of eat up at you. When you're mentioning the testing thing, I love the idea. By the way, I love the idea of the test and learn budget. Oh, that's a cool idea. And when you're testing, you need to have enough tests to know if it's real or not, the statistical
Mm-hmm.
relevance of something. That if you just, to your point, if you inch along, I mean, don't spend the whole budget on something, but you need to be able to invest a little bit of your budget to try something new, and it's not $4.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you may miss that. There's the win right over there, but you didn't give it enough time. So
Mm-hmm.
it is kind of a balance. So you don't want to spend all of your money in the wrong place, but you do need to be able to test and learn from it.
Yeah. I tend to think of it, I'm not a big salad eater because I just really love carbs, let's be honest. But like building a really good salad, like you start with your base and then you add in a bunch of different complementary items,
Okay.
and you can make a different salad at a different meal, right? So for each company I work for or work with, they might have like a different preferred, we call it marketing mix in this area, but if you want to call it salad mix, right? Like,
Sure.
to use the salad analogy, you might feel like a different salad tomorrow or a different salad today, or the grocery store might be out of your favorite dressing. So you need to
Yeah.
try something different. And I think if you're just stuck into that same recipe over and over and over, like you're going to be eating the food of the 90s
Mm-hmm.
in 2010 or the
Yep.
food of 2010 and 2020. And you're not going to be able to be as creative because you're always just trying to protect your little zone, right? You're trying to
Right.
have the same salad over and over and over instead of realizing that, like, I don't know, now you can put like pomegranate and chia seeds on your salad, and like that's a
Sure.
thing that you couldn't get in the stores 5 years ago.
But should we make the example like lasagna? That sounds like an even tastier example.
I mean, it
Like
could, but I feel like how many
make
ways can you really cook lasagna? And we can go on a whole tangent about that.
okay, I you could do like the vegetarian kind, the meat kind, the cheese kind, right? Is that it?
I guess.
3? I don't even know. I'm not really a lasagna expert. I just know that
And you
if
could
I
put
was
like
thinking of a
zucchini
marketing
noodles
budget,
on
I want
them.
like a lasagna marketing budget,
Not a
Give
salad.
me in this
Salad feels a
like
bit light.
arugula budgeting. I want dense cheese and
You want a hearty meal.
yes, yeah, hearty meal budget.
Maybe salad can be the appetizer then for the lasagna.
Salad can be sales budget. I want lasagna. Um,
Salad can be the lightweight budget. Lasagna can be the heavyweight budget. So you would put more of your budget against marketing than sales.
um, yeah, more the variable budget.
Yeah.
Um,
And how much? So here's another thing about fear. I find we don't often or often enough solicit opinions from people who don't like live and breathe our world, right?
agreed.
So like for
Yeah.
example, how many companies have you worked with that you hear from someone in marketing or someone in sales, "Oh, I wish marketing and sales were better connected."
Mm-hmm.
Like I think I have heard that or said that at every single company I have
Sure.
ever worked with or for.
Sure.
Same thing with customer service, same thing with account management. I think, if we only take feedback from our little world, we might be missing opportunities.
We've had salespeople on here before. They usually tear up the place. It's fun.
I'm
But it's
sure.
it's a great point though to make sure we keep inviting people even on here to let's get a customer service person on here, and maybe some other disciplines, and then talk to them about what they do and how it could or should interface with marketing.
Yeah, and their biggest challenges, their biggest myths, like their biggest annoyances, we all have our pet peeves.
Yeah. What do you hate? Get some sales guy. What do you
What
hate
do you
about
hate the
marketing?
most? Yeah.
I'll tell you about marketing.
Let me guess. So I could almost guess what sales would say, but it's like, for me, also, like if I hear that marketing and sales need to be better connected, I would say the second thing I've consistently heard is that like marketing really needs to give sales better leads. If sales isn't closing business, it's because marketing isn't giving them the quality leads they
Right,
need.
but if they do close it, it's because it was a terrible lead, but
Sales is
they closed it.
awesome. I
Sales is
mean, I'm
awesome.
just like the best salesperson ever in the world. I did as much as I could with what marketing gave me, and I persevered.
This lead was dead on arrival, and I resurrected it,
I
and
know. Performed some CPR. Now they're
yep,
living and breathing.
yeah, I shocked it, brought it back to life, and now it closed the deal, and we hit our quarter.
Woohoo! Yeah, but marketing's not to thank for that.
No,
The lead
no,
sucked.
they just spend our money. They don't actually.
Exactly. Exactly. It's
Yeah,
like the second most popular thing I hear from sales about marketing and vice versa.
is what just they
Well,
don't.
so the vice versa would be like we give sales all these great leads and sales just doesn't call them or doesn't pay attention to them or sales
Well,
doesn't
that's
realize
true.
how
They
great
don't
these leads
actually call
are.
them.
Yeah. Well,
Sometimes
I
they do.
mean, good salespeople do.
That's the difference, right? If you're at an organization where it's rocking, then some people are like it's not even a different team. Like we're and we're just together. It's
Mm-hmm.
part of the same effort. And then other teams, I interviewed at one place where they wanted me to chat with the sales director, be in a marketing role. I thought that's a
Mm-hmm.
great idea, and he was like, I tend to think that marketing and sales should always hate each other. It's like a healthy
What?
friction. And I was like, what? Oh, okay. Okay. And I was like some young marketer at the time. I had no idea, but I sensed something like, maybe I don't want to be here.
Right.
He doesn't even know me. He already wants to hate me
Right.
based on what I'm going to do.
He's
And
going to
then,
be finding things to not like about my work just because he thinks that's what needs to happen.
right.
I mean,
And
maybe that's his motivator, but I don't know.
I don't want to be his motivator in that way.
No.
Somebody else was like a more senior salesperson and came from like an Oracle. And his approach was, look, marketing leads are bonus. Sales, I expect you to get your own leads and close them. And I don't want to hear any of this stuff about marketing. You go source your own leads, close them. If marketing happens to show up and give us anything, great. But we're not going to count on it.
I kind of feel like that's like the opposite, and there should be like a happy medium. Because I think so for me, I get pitched by vendors all the time.
I bet.
And there
What's
are
your email? We can send you some more.
no, no, thank you. Don't need to be pitched by any more vendors. I tend to not respond, right? So I'm like
Yeah.
the person that like vendors hate because they'll email me, they know my title, they know who I work for. Like clearly I'm in their target audience, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to respond. I'm not going to give them the time of day. So, but I'll open their email because I do read every email that comes from my inbox. But I'm not going to waste someone's time, right? So number
Mm-hmm.
one, if we already have a solution, if we're using one of your competitors, if I'm happy with them, I'm not going to waste your time. If I'm not happy with their competitors, I will call them. So the ones that keep emailing me that I can't unsubscribe from, and like that also makes me mad about email marketing. Like you were marketing to me, right? I might just
Right.
be an individual contact, but I should still be able to unsubscribe from your cold emails. Please, good God, let me unsubscribe because I'm going to like
Yes.
your company a lot more. But if I
Yes.
can unsubscribe and I get, let's say, 3, 4, 5 emails, they all, like, number one, get increasingly desperate. You never want to go on a date with someone who's desperate. I also don't want to do business with a really desperate salesperson because they're going to maybe tell me things that they think I want to hear, overpromise, underdeliver. Either
Right.
way, not a great first impression. So some of them I end up responding to just to get them to stop emailing me. And usually I'll say pretty much what I said, like, not looking for your type of solution now. If I am, and if I'm interested in speaking with your company, I'll reach out to you. Please remove me from all of your marketing campaigns. Please put me on some sort of unsubscribe list. I sometimes get even more desperate and, if not outright, rude responses to that. And I'm like, you just forever removed your company from a company that I want to
That's
do
so
business with,
weird.
or forever removed yourself from a company that I want to do business with. Because if I'm giving you a polite no and I'm spending my time to email you back to say, like, look, like, I don't want to waste your time. If I'm interested, you'll hear from me.
Mm-hmm.
Have a good day. And you respond with hostility, that doesn't work for me. So I feel like the salespeople who work for teams that they're just like, you have to go get your own leads, you have to go and like cold email, cold LinkedIn message, drum up business, do
Yeah.
everything. It comes across to people like me, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't always set a good and positive light. Because then I'm going to remember that the next time I'm looking for a service user description, and darn sure I'm going to go look at all of your competitors as well as you, and then only email the people for me, reach out to people who I want. But I'm gonna remember that. I'm
Yep.
gonna remember like horrible salesperson one from this company. And usually even sometimes I've had to email them back and just request a different person to talk to.
Yeah.
So then they're not going to get that deal. Or if they
Sorry,
do,
not sorry. Don't
their
be a
colleague's going to
jerk.
get the commission. Right.
To your earlier point, you're selling to people. Be a person.
Exactly.
Don't be a
And like, don't be a desperate
jerk
person.
face.
Like, don't
Yeah.
don't don't do the digital marketing equivalent of like begging for a date. That works for exactly 0 people.
Please, please, please take my phone call.
No. And also, like, I never pick up my phone. I don't know. Do you ever pick up your phone? Your desk phone?
Um,
Do you have a desk
so
phone?
I don't, but my cell every now and then. You're right. Yesterday, this literally happened. There was a number. I looked at it. Hey, it's from New Hampshire. I'm in New Hampshire, but yeah, I know they're
Woo!
all fake. And I was like, oh, look, it's a spam call. Let me answer it. And for the first time in a long time, I was like, hello? And they're like, blah, 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 and clicked. Probably
Yep.
because it's one of those dialers to try to connect people at the same time. And so they already connect with somebody else, so they'll harass me later. I'm sure it's the
Yeah.
worst.
Yeah. I just figure, and this is like philosophy for like my landline desk phone as well as my personal cell phone.
Yeah,
If I don't know your number, if my caller ID doesn't show who you are and I don't recognize the name, if it's important, you'll leave me a message. I do listen to my voicemails,
for
but I
sure.
don't actually pick up my phone unless I recognize who's calling.
Yeah, yeah, you really can't these days, especially if you've gotten in the CMO cycles and you're getting pitched by everybody.
Yeah.
Um, we were talking about email earlier, and I had this really funny example I wanted to read to you of like the worst
Please.
email I've ever received.
Wait, did
Um,
you save it just to read it out?
yeah, oh yeah, for
Oh my
sure. You
God.
you know how we are as marketers, right? We're like,
Yeah.
oh, I was like,
Let me
oh my God,
screenshot
this
this
is
and share it with everyone I know about how bad this is.
yeah, it's bad. It has his name in there. I think I'll just leave his name
Don't
out.
we don't want their name. We
I
don't
don't.
want to like name and shame. We just want to shame.
Okay, but he puts it in there, but I'll leave it out. I guess we all know it's a he, but that's fine. So it says, in Casey, comma, first in bold. This email is really from me. His name. I am in blank 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 in the state. It is 89 degrees right now, and I
Okay.
was like,
Thanks for
okay,
the weather report.
okay, but it's just like what you'll see is that each one of these lines, I'm basically getting lied to every line,
Oh
right? It's like
no.
an automated email. So this email is really for me. Second, it is not going to everyone on my list. We noticed your activity on our site, including a recent download of something, something, something. Okay.
So did you actually download that though?
I might have. Yeah, I
Okay.
might have. Third, we took time to review your funnel. I know
Wow.
we have gaps in our understanding, but we tried to experience it as a customer. Fourth, it seems like you might be a good fit for a collaborative program we call blank,
Yep.
right? And then it's this long, long, long. And I'm like, dude, don't lie to me at the very 4 times in a row. We looked at your funnel. This is really from me and all this. I was like, oh, this. And so I actually called them and I tried to get in touch with the guy, leave a message. He's on vacation.
Okay.
So this
So it
email went out
clearly
and
was
he's on vacation.
not from them because he's on a beach somewhere.
He's on a beach
Or
somewhere.
maybe it's 89 degrees on the beach. That'd be a pretty good beach temperature.
Right. Right.
But
Or
how did
maybe
they review your funnel? Like, did you
they
see
didn't.
them?
They
But
didn't.
if they did, you could have proven that by going and seeing their information in your marketing
Right.
qualification
If you
system.
really did, you would take a screenshot of the fact that you filled out the form or something.
Right. Yeah.
And
But
no, it's just
no.
like this.
And was the formatting all weird and like you had said it was kind of like bold everywhere?
Yeah. Like nobody bolds their personal
Why?
emails. It's not personal. And you're telling me it is. Don't do that. Anyways, it's so inauthentic and I just hated it.
Yeah.
Um, and it's from like a marketing analyst group.
Boy, I hate for me the ones that, and maybe this is just because like, so I'm also, as you know, also from New Hampshire, but I did grow up in the South.
That's right.
So yeah, small worlds.
Yeah.
But it's like the passive aggressive ones where like, I think I might have missed you. I think you might be
Oh,
really busy. And I'm like, yep, I am. Yep, you did. Okay, great. Can we move on? Like, get to the point of what you want to say. Or like, don't insert this fake politeness or like try and kind of passive aggressively like put the onus back on me to get in contact with you. Like
right.
that just gets my hackles up.
Yeah, and following up on your spam with another spam saying, "Did you get my message?"
Right. It's like I did, but I marked it as spam.
And so I'm going to mark this
So
one as spam too. Please, spam gods,
exactly.
please punish this offender and then make them stop
Exactly.
sending mail.
Block them.
Block.
I actually have an entire like subfolder because I'm like a email like organizational nerd.
Yeah.
So I like categorize all my emails so that I can always like go back and easily find them. And then I auto archive like every X month. So if it's like, oh, Q1 this year is in
Mm-hmm.
like this folder. So anyways, I digress, but I
I
do
like
have an
that.
actual like pitches email address or like a subfolder so that any pitch I get, I actually, instead of marking this spam, I try to not do that like at the first blush because, everyone's got to make a buck. But if it gets really bad and I email them back and they don't stop emailing me or I can't unsubscribe, then I will mark it as spam. But
Mm-hmm.
every pitch goes into this email address and it's like little subfolder. So I can actually look back in time if I really
Wow.
want and go like, oh yeah, you had like 5 different people email me over the course of 2 years. Like, do you just have a really high sales turnover or are you just reassigning our account rep? And
Ouch.
then each time they're trying to get business from us because the previous person hasn't been successful because they won't be because we don't have any budget or we're already using another service that we're happy with. Like,
Right.
why?
I
Why?
love that pitch folder though. That's like gold. You should save that somewhere. Maybe turn
I
it into a book.
know. Oh, yeah, but that'd be a lot of shame. There
Wouldn't that
are
be awesome? A book. You just call the book Marketing Shame with like a bell on the front. Some like old lady hitting a bell saying shame, shame. And then you had just
it's a
pitches
little
with
bit more Handmaid's Tale reminiscent than I would like, but I
that
like
was
where
Game
you're
of
going with
Thrones,
it.
but either way.
Oh, there
So
you go. I was watching Handmaid's Tale the other night, so
oh yeah,
yeah.
I haven't seen that.
Okay, you should. Number
I
one, we
should.
can talk about that later, but
Well, each page would have the actual
like
email
different.
pitch on it, nothing censored
Oh,
whatsoever. Their
there's a
name, their email, their phone, everything.
there's a few people that uh, there's a lot of people I talk to that work in the same industry, right? Like marketers talk to other marketers. I think
Sure.
it's a really good way to learn. Like pro tip, if you want to learn how to be a better marketer, like get to know other marketers and like
Yes.
ask them questions and like see how they approach things. But it also can be kind of funny because it's almost like everyone will get the same email within like a week. And it's like, how are all of these different companies getting like the same email from like salesperson number one that is equally horrific? Like it is literally the cut and paste same email. And it's like, oh, like, it's April, so Q2 has just started and they're just doing their Q2 roundup. And like word gets around. We all talk to each other.
Yeah. It's so for the person sending that email, when Katie said definitely go for it with your test, she didn't mean that.
No.
She didn't mean send that horrible email to everyone on the list.
Yeah, that's not a smart test. That's what I call a spray and pray strategy.
Yeah.
Or some people like to call it like spaghetti against the wall and let's see what sticks. But neither of those, number one, are good mental images. And number two, like neither of them are really successful
Right.
strategies.
It's like one step of in like Dante's Inferno of just straight spam. Just
Yeah.
don't even know who you are spam versus like one layer above that and it's still
I
spam.
sort of have an idea of who you are because someone sold me information, but I know nothing about you and I actually haven't done my research. But I'm going to tell you that I've done my research in the very first line. I'm going to lie to
Yeah.
you, just like you said.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm personally writing you this email right now on the beach. It's 89
Mm-hmm.
degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Lies. I looked up the weather. It's not 89 degrees on that day.
I want a photo of the beach if you're at least going to like send an email. Number one,
That's
also
different.
don't send
Send me a
emails from
video.
vacation, right?
Be like,
Just
I
don't.
hit quota. I'm on the beach. Bye from me later. See ya.
Yeah, no, just don't work from vacation. I don't like that.
No, definitely not work from vacation. That's the worst. You
No.
shouldn't do that.
Or like don't lie that you're working from vacation because again, social media, we can see that you're on vacation or respond and get your
Right.
out of office message.
And when Casey calls your office to find out who are you, so I can ask you if you're for real with your email,
Yeah.
and you're actually on vacation the day that this email was sent.
The jig is up.
Busted.
The jig is up.
Busted.
Yep.
Crazy. Couple questions for you.
Yeah.
What's your take on a couple of these things? One, talk futuristic marketing. We know like social's been around for a long time. Podcasts have as well, but I feel
Mm-hmm.
like there's this thing where now a lot of businesses are getting into it and just they're
Yeah.
exploding. What's
Yeah.
your
I mean,
take on them?
so podcasts have been around for a long while. If you don't
Yeah.
already pay attention to Tom Webster, to Edison Research, Nielsen also does a bunch of research about podcasts. There's a bunch of people out there who have been following this market for a while. Tom is the one that actually I knew well before I worked for Nielsen, and he's been talking about the power of podcasts for a long time. I won't name names, but a heck of a long time. So if you're not listening to podcasts, I think that's That's fine. We don't all have to listen to podcasts.
Sure.
We don't all stream music, right? Like personal consumption. But
Yeah.
I feel like podcasts are experiencing, I don't want to call it a resurgence, because I don't know that podcasts were ever as popular as they are today. But podcasts are now the new hot thing. And I think, for me, I really like listening to podcasts. I'm not as big of a podcast watcher just because of the context. Like, for example, like I'll be listening to a podcast on my subway ride, and you can't really watch unless it's downloaded.
Right.
But I'll listen to podcasts. And for me, I like to listen to podcasts like less about marketing, more about things that I don't end up spending a lot of time thinking about, but I want to either know more about or proactively want to spend more time thinking about.
Sure.
So, there's all sorts of podcasts out there. I think it's a really great format for learning. I think it's a really great format for consumption because, audiobooks years ago started becoming more popular. And
Oh,
to
yeah.
me, depending on the topic of a podcast, sometimes they're just funny, but sometimes they're kind of like an audiobook, but like episodic audiobooks where you end up learning a lot about a subject. So I think
Like the hardcore marketing show.
exactly where you learn from different marketing experts.
Right.
But I think podcasts are really, really powerful because to me, it kind of removes a barrier, right? Like I don't have a car. So, because I live in New York, I don't need a car. So I don't listen to talk radio because I'm literally not in the car where I would
Yeah.
listen. I don't even listen to radio really because I don't have a car, never in a car, 10 years, no
Right.
car. Podcasts, things that I can download, like great, and things that I can start and stop. So if my subway commute's 25 minutes and the podcast is 45, cool. That's like to and from work. And then I've
Yeah.
learned something new for the day. So, for me, I really like them. And again, I don't think they've been as popular before as they are now. I like that businesses are getting into them. And I like that businesses, at least the ones I see, and like shout out to Nielsen. Nielsen has a podcast. It's called The Database, and it's
Nice.
about all manner of topics. So
The
sometimes it's about,
database. Ooh.
yeah, because it's about data that Nielsen has and
Oh
like
god.
the impact of data,
Okay.
right?
Okay, I
So
get it now. At first I was like
yeah,
some Matrix shit going on here, but
nah, Nielsen has data, man.
that's true.
So shout out to Nielsen and the team that does the podcast because it's on season 3 right now. And I think it's really awesome. Of course, I'm biased, but it's about all sorts of data. So it's not about like selling Nielsen's products and services. You won't hear
Right.
pitches, but you will hear like, okay, like let's talk about, you know, seasonal consumption of certain grocery store items or like why the heck certain things are so popular. And like, let's pull in an expert to like, you're reading these, reports, you're looking at charts and graphs, like, but what does it actually mean, man? So like we pull on experts to talk to you about what it actually means. And it's again about all myriad of different things that Nielsen does and data that we have and things that we track, which I think is great. And I think a lot of companies like NPR has like a whole slate of podcasts, right? They
Yeah.
pretty much have podcasts for like every major show plus more.
Yep.
Some just started as podcasts, but I think it's a really great way to reach consumers. I find that most successful podcasts, or at least the ones that I personally enjoy listening to, even if they're company branded, like they're not selling a product. They're trying to inform you and educate you. And like I said, put the person back in B2B. They're talking to you as a person, no matter if it's about finance or economics or different data, for example. I'm a big podcast fan.
Me too, and I think you really get to know people as well. Like I've gotten to really know you, but also I think the people have also will get to know you as well, and myself as well, because we've kind of like traveled through over 100 now episodes together. So that means I probably said the same corny thing a couple times, but also people are like, oh yes, say that corny thing one more time, Casey.
Right, it's like your catchphrase, Casey. Do you have a catchphrase? You need a catchphrase.
I've got lots of them.
Okay.
I'm sure people right now have their favorites. But yeah, I have favorite stories. I have favorite phrases. I like to start the thing and end the thing the same way.
Okay. That's consistency.
Yeah.
That's branding.
Yeah. And also the more I listen to other people, sometimes I'll sort of take on whatever their phrases are too temporarily. It's very interesting. What about chat? I've seen chat kind of like surface as well. Web chat on the B2B side.
Yeah, I think it has a time and a place. Number one, it's kind of my pet peeve, like some of these chat, and this is more like pure UI and UX, right? But like if I'm on a website, I'm looking for information, maybe I'm looking to download a report, maybe I'm just like browsing to see what your products and services are. because I'm starting to look for, things that you produce, or maybe I've heard of your company because someone else has mentioned it. And like, I like to know a lot about companies. So if I
Yeah.
hear a new name, I'm always going to go to their website and learn,
Yep.
at least just to see what they're about, so I can understand like where in the whole marketplace they play. But I don't know if you've seen it. Like, some of these chat interfaces are really like unobtrusive, where they're just kind of like in the lower right hand corner.
Mm-hmm.
But then oftentimes I'll browse in my mobile, right? Because that's what we all do. Like, you just go to a
Yeah.
website on your phone, and it ends up that like the chat takes up like
The whole,
half of the
yeah.
screen, or it's
Yeah.
like even super large on my laptop. And I'm like, number one, I'm not just, please don't immediately pop up the chat when I hit your website. Like, don't pop it up on the
Yeah.
homepage. Give me at least like 4 or 5 pages if you're going to automatically pop it up at all until you pop it up. I prefer personally to just have like a button to click. So I can click chat and it either toggles me to a new page or toggles the thing open.
Yeah.
And then some of them, the interfaces, I feel like it's like everyone hides their unsubscribe button in email. So I have to hunt for it, and it's like this super light gray. And I'm like, these are like blue light blocking glasses, but it's feel like I need to like put like a magnifier on to like find the unsubscribe. I
Yeah.
kind of feel that way with some of these chat interfaces with like the X button. We're like, no, I don't want to chat with your bot. I literally just want to look at your website, find out information. Like, let me come to you. It's
Yeah.
kind of like they're going, do you want to chat? And I'm like, you're just a little bit overeager. Like, just let me figure out what I want first.
Yeah.
So I think I like it because then I can use that. Sometimes I've just used it because it's easier than filling out a form to get a salesperson to contact me, for example. And I've just
Right.
like had a chat, like, here's my name, here's the company I work for. I'd like a salesperson to contact me at this email address. Here's what I want to discuss. Like, boom, done. That's like one message, and then they can route that appropriately. I mostly use it for service and support, but I will always go to a human if I can. And I just think that chat sometimes is more disruptive to my browsing experience than
Mm-hmm.
helpful. And I think the disruptiveness, when I see it from every single website I go to, and I'm kind of joking, but it's a good majority, it just turns me off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's kind of, I feel like it's the sort of next stage of infancy, whatever that might be, where it's getting there, it's getting adopted, but we're adopting it kind of like idiots to start. We're like being children with the way we adopt it. We're like, oh yeah, let's put it on there.
yeah,
And then especially bots drive me crazy. Like, a good friend of mine, Craig, from Qualified, another kind of chat, like his approach is, look, bots can't sell, but humans can't scale. So we need to come together and figure out where these two things come, what the
like, where's
intersection of
that
that is.
handoff? Yeah,
Yeah. I don't want to talk to your stupid bot. Like I had a phone call today to talk to the bank, and, and it was like, tell me, the computer was like, tell me what you're calling about today. And I was like, well, I got an email that said this transaction didn't go through, but I checked my accounts and they're all set. So do you have an issue? And it's like,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't. Could you say, like, to make a transaction?
Representative.
It's like, okay, no,
Yeah,
you asked me. Okay, otherwise give me a phone, like a number to press.
yeah,
You asked me to tell you what's going on, so let me
yeah.
tell you. I know. So bots
I
kind of
speak to
drive me
yeah,
crazy.
I
Like
speak
I
to those
don't want to.
bots like they're five. I'm like,
Yeah.
representative,
Yeah.
customer
Right.
service.
Yeah, totally. I don't want to talk to
Yeah.
your stupid
So,
bot.
and here's the thing though, for me, and I've never worked for like a chatbot company, right?
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. I'll use Apple as an example. So I just upgraded from like an iPhone 7 with like the fingerprint to an iPhone 10 with a Face ID, and I
Whoa.
don't have Face ID turned on. So I'm like back to using a passcode, which is fine because I don't want to turn Face ID on. But like, I hear the reason they changed that is because they wanted to put fingerprint like everywhere, so you didn't have to press the button. They want to get rid of the button, but the tech wasn't there. So I hear in future iterations, I don't know, maybe they'll go back to fingerprint. I know some other companies already do with their phones. You can just like press anywhere on the screen and it registers your fingerprint. That's kind of the analogy of what I'm thinking about with chatbots and the whole chat technology. Like, is it a technology issue that provides the poor user experience? In the case of like the audio, right? Is audio recognition just not as sophisticated as it needs to be? Are we not using AI or ML in a sophisticated way? So we're like still doing the very basics because maybe we're only just doing like voice matching and not having, kind of any AI, or then, ML kind of helping the AI improve over time? Or is it like practice. So like, are these companies out there offering like,
Right.
you can customize your chatbot a million different ways. You can have it appear when people first hit the site. You can have it appear after a series of actions. Like, we kind of have a triggering mechanism built in, much like you have like triggered emails, if this, then that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know about it enough to know if my poor user experience is a product of technology or product of decision making.
Yeah, I
I'd
do.
actually be interested to hear from
I
people
do.
who
I
know
know
more about
exactly
it.
what it is. It's
What is it then?
it's all it's practice. I call it
So it's
strategy,
decision
but like,
making.
yeah, it's all that focus. And I was driving me bonkers this morning, you know, because marketers, we're all guilty of this. We want to know the tactics of like, well, how do I put it on the website? And oh, how do I change the color? Great. What are you going to have it say? When is it going to pop up? And how are you going to not annoy the shit out of your customers
Yeah.
when they get there? No thought to that. We kind of just go right to the deployment of it. And it's like, please just spend like 1 minute on strategy. I know maybe it's the wrong word, but it's like
No,
strategy
that's
planning.
the right
It's just
word. Yeah.
planning. Just 1 second to go, what's the best way to do this? I'm not sure. Let's
Also,
find out.
yeah, like going back to test and learn, like
Yeah,
look at the amount of people that have the chatbot pull up and then just furiously click X on the chatbot to
I
close a
bet.
little window, like, and then test, like, hey, like let's do an A/B test. So
Yeah.
visitor visitor B to the website has this only pop up when they reach certain pages. You're going to have a smaller sample set. To your point, you need to actually have the budget to test, so you have statistical rigor
Yeah.
and you have a solid sample size. It's not just like, oh, first four people seem to like this. It's like, okay, like a little bit small. Um, but yeah, if it's all decision making, then we as marketers need to do a lot better.
Yeah.
Me as a marketer, I'm continually frustrated by the whole thing.
Yeah, I think it's so oftentimes tech pushes tech, and it's like a drug. We're like moths to a flame. We're like, oh, no tech, and then we don't even ponder how happens with marketing automation. Hey, you can
Mm,
email the world, you can automate, you can spy on people. What do you got? How are you going to use it? Like
yeah,
Mailchimp, like, oh, come on, you can automate, you can nurture, you can all these things. You're just going to use it like a plain email app. I mean, that's really what I've been sort of fighting that battle for years now, just trying to help people know how to do it better. But
to
it's
be
it's
more
frustrating
thoughtful.
because they
Yeah.
don't necessarily even want to hear that. They want to hear
Talk about fear.
yeah, maybe that hides the fear. They want to hear, well, how do I change go into two columns on this email? Maybe you shouldn't even have two columns on that email, but that's what you're interested in. And so I kind of almost have to trick them, like, okay, here's how you do two columns. By the way, here's some email best practices. Please don't violate these.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Now, do you find that those conversations happen with only certain types of people? Like, are you consistently
Mm,
talking to the same types of people? Is it that we kind of as marketing and like our overall marketing culture aren't incentivizing people for, I'll call it from the top to the bottom, to think about why? Like, is
mm,
that your impression? Because sometimes I find with certain types of leaders, with certain types of companies, with certain type of what I'll call it like a department culture, people are far more focused on the what than the why,
mm.
either because of their role. Their role is entirely what based. So like
Yeah.
you're talking to the wrong person in that case.
Right.
Or maybe
Could
it's a
be.
culture thing where they feel like they can't think about the why because the why is done above them and it's not their place to question the why. So therefore, even though they're kind of wondering why the heck we're doing this, why we're taking this approach, they're only going to talk to you about the what because of some sort of like cultural impact. Like, I guess, what's your take in working with marketers across all different companies? I'm assuming of like all different levels.
Yeah.
Like, do you see that
Yeah.
split happening?
I could take stabs at it. I think sometimes it just the higher up you go, the more you're thinking of the why and the what and not the
Mm-hmm.
how. Um, and so maybe at the larger companies, the people higher up the food chain are doing that, and you're
Mm-hmm.
not doing that lower on. And but then the challenge is a lot of us are just like in the S&B world, like a single marketer in a company. And so you're kind of being asked to do everything. And so a
True.
lot of that energy goes first into the tech. And I'm just like strategy, then process, then technology. You can do the tech all day, every day, but just do a little bit of that strategy and process first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't
and
know.
I
Maybe
think
it's
sometimes
behavior. It's habit.
potentially, I know in like the kind of business process improvement, a lot of what my roles have always entailed is like, okay, we have this thing, but how can we either rebuild this thing because this
Sure.
thing isn't what we need, ascertaining that the thing is or isn't what we need, or just like improving and iterating. And for me, kind of, you said like the strategy, the process, and the tech. for me, it's also like the people are an important part.
Yeah.
So if we have a strategy and we know how we want to get it done, do we have the right people? Do we have the right roles? And
To get
people
it
could
done.
be,
Yeah.
right, people could be like support from tech, right? People could be
Mhm.
like account partners, people could be full-time resources, people could be contractors, but like, how are we actually getting it done? Because I think
Right.
that's also where, if you only have one person, like there is an actual like limit to how much that one person can do. So then I feel like we lean into automation to
Yeah.
eke out as much as we can. Maybe automation will never solve the problem we're facing. Maybe we just actually need to add another person, right? Because we can iterate
Yeah.
and automate as much as we can, but like we're always going to get, potentially, not always, but in most cases, you'll get more out of two than you will one. And
Right.
maybe that's why, maybe it's a changing conversation. So not like how can we automate more and more and more, like, yes, how can we automate? Like, we don't want to spend time doing manual things that can be
Sure.
automated. But sometimes you need to not have things automated, especially when you start something new, so that when you build automation, you know what the automation can and should do.
Right.
So, and I find that
I like
like,
that.
especially as I've grown in my career, like I still want to know how we actually get things done and what roadblocks exist. Like I'm a big fan, um, of it's called the 3 Ps. And some companies do it, some people don't. But the progress you made this week, your plans for the next week, and the potential problems, I always, always, always want to know the potential problems. So what can I, as a people leader, or even for me, like talking with my management, like what potential problems exist that if you can help me solve will help me continue on the path that like we've all agreed that we need to be on. And I think for technology, you're helping companies solve problems. So even if you don't do it in terms of like a status report, you're talking to people, and what they might not be saying, but what they're showing you is that I have a problem and I need
Right.
you to help me solve it. But I want to understand why that problems exist, because then I know the best way to solve it.
I love that. Love the 3 Ps and just
I can't take credit for the 3 Ps.
getting ahead of it. No, that's fine.
Way more smart than me came up
I'm
with
sure.
it.
I'm sure, but I'm gonna credit to you right now on those,
Woo-hoo.
and then
Credit to you for introducing it to you. I'll take that.
sure. So, who are you? How did you become this wealth of knowledge and experience, and this crazy marketer that just knows all these things and has opinions on everything? I mean, it's been so much fun to talk to you. Can you take us back to like little Katie days?
Yeah.
You always know you're going to be a marketer when you grew up?
No, actually, I did not. I think first and foremost, I'm just kind of, I'll call myself a nerd, but I'm just probably far too curious for my own good. So
Sure.
I thought at various points in time of my life about being a band director. I grew up playing music, violin, percussion, was like drum major of my high school marching band. As you mentioned, I was a DJ for a brief point in time. Music has always been something I've loved. So I was like, great, maybe I'll teach music. Separately, I've thought about being a teacher, which I teach sailing in my spare time now. So I kind of get to scratch that itch. And sailing is just something that I found as an adult and absolutely love. I thought about being a lawyer because I total nerd. Like I'll work with our legal team and I'm like, oh, like, let's talk about this indemnification clause. And the legal team's looking at me like, wait, you want to talk about that? And I'm like, yeah, no, can we please? Because I want to know the contract. I want to know like the paper behind the business.
Wow.
And I like, for better or for worse, I tend to like debate and arguing and really understanding some
We haven't
nuanced
argued
things.
yet, though.
No, we haven't. We'll keep this
No.
polite.
Yeah,
That'll
okay.
be podcast 2.
Okay, number 2, we'll argue. Got
We
it.
just bring up things to argue. Have controversial opinions
Let's
is
do
like
it.
you should just spin off like the Marketing Hardcore podcast and just be like controversial opinions podcast and have
Yeah,
like a bunch of controversial marketing opinions in a round table. Anyways, I digress.
until Twitter blocks me for being too controversial. Hey.
You know, 10, 6 on one hand, 6 on the other.
Right.
So I grew up kind of, doing a bunch of stuff and being interested in a lot of things. And,
Yeah.
I never really fit into like one group or one category. I kind of like to say, like, I always felt like the odd person out sometimes, but, I was, kind of friends with everyone, but, my group was 5 different groups because I kind of fit
Right.
in multiple places. So for me, I actually applied for the university. I went to NC State, shout out to the Wolfpack, for computer engineering.
Do they howl? Oh, I felt like howling when you did that.
Yes, at football games.
Oh.
So, yeah, I won't do it now, but at football games, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I applied for computer engineering, and then
Oh,
irony
wow.
of ironies, because this was back in like the early 2000s, I was like, oh, like I don't want to just like sit behind a computer not talking to people all day. So then I switched my major to business. And I ended up doing a business major with a concentration in marketing because I've always been fascinated by people and what makes people tick. And I thought, with as much as I'd seen marketing evolve, even in, let's call it like the 90s to the early 2000s, I always wanted to have something new to learn. And yeah, I know that tech was evolving, but I also felt like marketing would be a really good mix of kind of figuring out how people tick and organization, understanding how to reach people. And I always felt like there would be a lot to learn. Plus, I just felt like business was a pretty good general degree to have with a solid
Totally.
foundation, because no matter if I worked in an engineering department or not, I needed to know some business fundamentals. So that's how I started with marketing. I'm kind of amazed that I seem to be one of the few people I know that actually uses their undergrad in their daily life. But I can pretty conclusively say that not very little, but like I work in digital marketing, right? So
Yeah.
not many of my classes touched on where I spend my time now, but a lot of them touched on the strategy and the business fundamentals in the
Got it.
foundation. So, like the specifics, I really had to learn on the job, and I keep learning on the job and keep pushing myself to learn. But the strategy and the foundation, and like understanding how to read, a P&L, understanding, gap, understanding
Mm,
what a finance lead or what an ops lead might be concerned about, understanding like different ways of production, like all
that's
of
cool.
those really have helped me, I think, in my career. But also, I think for me, the biggest thing is just lifelong learning. I think if you stop learning, you tend to fall off of relevance, and you tend to not be as, I would say, as powerful of a person as you could be. You tend to minimize your seat at the table if you even have one,
Hmm.
or you're just not, especially in the world of digital marketing, you're just not going to be up on, doesn't even need to be the latest trends, but like the latest strategies, the latest tools, the latest evolutions. Like you don't always need to be like ahead of the curve, but if you're completely missing the curve, then you're missing something. So I'm a huge fan of lifelong learning, and actually really excited about the innovations in that space where learning is being democratized.
Yeah.
So it's enabling people to get into career paths that they might not have had. I also feel like kind of culturally in the world there's a greater understanding of what we used to call like alternative career paths, so people who maybe didn't go to college but got experience in some other way, jobs that don't require college degrees, and also just access. So anyone can go on the internet and look up a YouTube video or go to one of the online learning platforms and really help keep their knowledge up. The barriers to entry are much lower, and that's also where I'm just always baffled, like when people don't take the time to learn. So
Right.
that's that's kind of me in a nutshell. Is always curious
Always
and
curious.
have a lot of very varied interest.
Me too. I can completely relate to that. And then when you're saying at school that you started out on the computer science route, engineering route, and they were like,
Yeah.
well, like I same thing, except it took me a computer science degree to go, well,
Oh, really? You did
and
the whole
so
degree?
I did, but man, it was so painful. All the math, oh, so much math, and
Yeah.
math I've never used ever again. Um, but it makes me feel smart. But at the same time, all my electives were calm the whole time, so it was kind of funny that I had the technical side, but it's like, please, I want to talk to people, and they kept
Yeah.
taking me deeper and deeper into the computer, where eventually it was like a microprocessor, which is just a gate, like a garden gate,
Mm-hmm.
open, close, and you're like, really? I'm opening gates at a microscopic level, and I'm not talking to anyone on campus
Mm-hmm.
because this is what I'm like, oh, I want to talk to people. For me, computer science, I thought, oh, networking, AOL at the time, like that kind of computer. But it was
Mm-hmm.
it was so much more just coding at the base level. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you were able to break free, and you could still be technical, still be digital, but you had that cool foundation.
Yeah, I mean, I love talking to developers mostly because I know how hard their jobs are.
Yeah.
So, I understand enough because
Hard. Come on. They're drinking Monster, looking at a black screen with colorful letters on it.
yeah, but like it's that one misplaced like semicolon
It's a
that you're
semicolon
like,
all the time, every time.
always the semicolon. And you're like, this thing doesn't work. And you're spending 10 hours of drinking Monster to try and figure out where either that extra semicolon is or that missing semicolon, whatever it
Yeah.
is. Like, that's infuriating. So, but like, I learned C++ like
Yeah.
way, way way back, almost 20 years ago now. Obviously being in marketing, existing on the internet, like I know enough HTML to be dangerous. I can talk to you about good UI, UX. I can understand like where certain development constraints happen. I kind of like to be the translator in between like
Yeah,
developers and people
totally.
who don't understand development, but it is a skill set that I don't have enough patience to possess. So
Hmm.
total respect for the good developers out there because they solve some really hard problems in really cool ways, and it requires a heck of a lot of thinking to do it because you have to your point, if marketers have to understand strategy before they start talking tactics, developers have to understand like what the end goal is
I
and
know.
what the parameters are and
Yeah,
what the constraints are before they actually start writing a single line of code. So
that's true. Well, I guess shout out to the devs that created this
yeah,
PowerPoint and created this Zoom meeting for us to play on. Shout
exactly.
out devs. Thanks for staying up late, hitting that
Thanks for
monster.
keeping us employed.
Yeah, doing the things you do on your 9
Exactly.
monitors and
Yeah,
the buggers that never speak English. They always speak cryptic languages. So
I
you're
know.
right.
You're like, what does this mean?
Everyone's got their part to play in the whole operation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Now, all this career, all this crazy stuff you're doing, if you were to go back in a time machine to when you first got out of school and give
Okay.
yourself advice on like career, life, whatnot, like what would you
Hmm.
go back and tell yourself? Beginning
Uh,
of your marketing career kind of thing.
yeah, I'd probably tell myself two things. One is don't doubt my gut so much. And that's like more than just marketing advice. I think I was, in my early 20s, like always wondering, like, should I really trust this instinct? Should I not? Like, I didn't have a lot of context, right? Especially in like the professional world, but even like existing as an adult, you're still learning. But I have consistently found that the times when I trust myself the most, even if it seems kind of crazy to other people, maybe it's, survivorship bias, if you want to call it
Yeah,
that. Like,
sure.
I haven't made the choices I haven't made. So the choices I've made that, again, have seemed kind of crazy to other people, like, I can't think of a single one that I regret. So that'd be like thing number one is like learning to like really trust my gut and not like rely on pro and con lists so much or, like double checking every single thing.
Sure.
Just learning that a bit earlier. I think number two is, for me, when I look at, the roles out there and the companies out there, they tend to want to hire really two different types of marketers. So, like, this is more like career wise. I am a breadth and depth marketer. So, first and foremost, breadth, right? I've worked across a bunch of different types of industries, I've worked across a bunch of different marketing functions. I'm not going to be suited for roles or companies who just want the same person who was a manager and then a senior manager and then a director and then a senior director and then a VP and so forth and so on in that same area. That's kind of the depth first, breadth second, if at all. I'm much more not jack of all trades, master of none, because I'm also a firm believer that like you need to know your areas of expertise really, really well. But I am a firm believer in context. So I always want to know, to your point, like I always want to talk to the salespeople and the customer service people and the finance people and how is revenue recognized and how are you closing deals and what are your problems and how are you serving the needs of your customers and what tools and tricks are you using and what do you find that's successful and what's qualitative feedback, right? So I'm a context person. I think for me, the breadth of my experience helps me have context so that I see things in a different way than someone who is, for example, like just done social media since, 2009, whatever the case may
Right.
be.
Yep.
I'm kind of picking on social media because I spent a large number of years doing social media after I had done other things and before I started doing other things as well. So that was, a period in my career where I really was entirely focused on social. But for me, I realize that I'm not a fit for every company. I'm not a fit for every role because I have a lot of breadth and the areas that I have depth in are important, but they're not the areas that I'm not like a linear person. I think someone who I actually worked with at Nielsen, has said this in the past, and they said, that careers should be like jungle gyms, not like ladders. And that really resonated with me because I think Nielsen, wonderfully so, gives people the ability to have jungle gym type careers, even with all the change the company is going through. And that's an opportunity, right? I think I've been with companies that really only think in terms of ladders. So understanding that it's just as important for me to find that jungle gym type of fit, because that tends to be the endless curiosity person that I am, rather than ladder, kind of goes back to trusting my gut, but it's more just understanding the context of, at points in my career, I've been searching for jobs, or in points when I've been looking for new opportunities within a company, understanding if I'm dealing with a jungle gym or a ladder, knowing what I am, knowing what the situation is, knowing what the company is, I think is pretty powerful. And again, I find that pretty consistently that companies want one or they want the other. And for me, I just think knowing that about yourself, for me, figuring that out, luckily, I think I did that pretty early on in my career. It's actually really helped me when I've maybe been approached about roles or searching for them, like narrow down that field to something that I feel is not only going to be a fit for today, but a cultural fit for years to come.
Love that. Love that. Yeah, it's funny looking back and sort of the wisdom you gain just from going through the tough things, and also the good things, and then kind of the hindsight. It's not even just 2020. It's like it's always interesting looking back.
Yeah. And hindsight isn't always 2020. Sometimes there's this stuff that you're just
You're
like,
right.
that I still don't know where that came from. Like that hit me totally left field. Sometimes you're like, oh yeah. And like, I feel like as you get older, this becomes more common. Like, I don't know where that came from. I feel like for me it was a little bit when I was younger, not that I'm like super old now, but definitely like middle-aged. Now I feel like I'm like, okay, I'm evolving, because now I'm like, oh yeah, I saw that coming.
Mm-hmm.
Or I had a hunch, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
my gut was kind of indicating something, or I wasn't completely unaware. But yeah, I mean, sometimes things do just hit you. And again, I think that's where, at least professionally, always trying to be on top of your game, always trying to learn, always trying to develop, always being curious. When stuff does go pear-shaped, right? Maybe the startup you joined suddenly lost a client and they had to lay off half of the marketing department, or maybe
Right.
the company you joined, the stock price really drops and there's continual, budget cutbacks and staff cutbacks, or investment in like the area that you don't work in, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of, maybe you have a manager that is fantastic and the reason you joined the company, they decide to get another job, your new manager comes in and suddenly it's not that great of a job anymore, they have a different vision, whatever the case may be. It can also be on the opposite.
Right.
Where maybe you join a company because the company's strong, the manager's not so strong, and then suddenly you have a new manager come in and it's like the sun is shining again.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's
I like that.
not always going to be negative. But I feel like as I've gotten older, it's not even foresight, it's just, yeah, that's not entirely surprising to me.
Mm-hmm.
And when stuff does kind of come from left field and you get knocked down, I feel like it's easier to get back up again sometimes.
Yeah. What did I hear? It's not getting knocked down, it's the getting back up afterward. That's the important part,
It
you
is.
know?
It is.
Yeah.
And I think for me, like when I graduated college, a few years later, the crash happened. And so
Mm.
I've both lived through like the largest economic expansion in history, as
Mm-hmm.
well as one of, what, the Great Recession. So one of the largest crashes in history. And the context in which I've experienced those things, like my life context has changed, right? Like
Right.
it's there has been a decade in between, at least just the kind of beginning of the financial crash and now like 2 years ago. So my perspectives have changed, my personal context has changed, but even in my, shorter career, it's not like I've been working for 30 years. I feel like I've also come to understand that the world around us matters just as much as the job we do.
It does. I mean, it's like us in the context of the world,
Yeah.
for
And we
sure.
all just try to live our best lives,
Yeah.
whatever that means.
Just do
Yeah. And do good. Like leave the world
good.
better when you go to bed than when you woke up. I think it's always the
Absolutely.
goal.
Where can people reach out, connect? What kind of social platforms? I
Yeah,
guess if they don't have them, they got to get them so they can connect.
they are. So I'm pretty much in all of them, as one would expect.
Yep.
I tend to post less than I consume. So I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I keep Facebook pretty tight unless like we've met. You can be my friend in Facebook.
Yep.
People I haven't met, not going to let them into my Facebook.
Right.
Professional connections for LinkedIn. I pretty much follow anyone I find interesting on Twitter, and same for Instagram. So I'm Miss Katie Mo, MISSKATIEMO, pretty much everywhere, although it's just first name dot last name on LinkedIn and Facebook. So Katie Morse, Morse, like Morse code,
Awesome.
which now like young kids start to know. Apparently there's like a Fortnite tie. I don't play Fortnite,
Oh,
but
Morse code.
sailors in Morse code, like I say Morse and they're like, oh yeah, like
Morse
Morse.
code.
Other people, they're like, spell that for me. But I feel like Morse code is kind of experiencing a resurgence. No related to the guy that invented it, unfortunately.
Right.
So,
It's funny. I played a lot of games like Civilization and whatnot, and some of the weapons of war they had were like trebuchets. And so
yeah,
a trebuchet, I've lived with trebuchets for years, but it's not exactly. People know catapult, and they know
yeah.
maybe a cannon, but a trebuchet
It's not in the common vernacular.
has a nice long range, longer range than a catapult. It's fantastic.
Got to be
So
selective about your weapons choice in those
yeah,
games.
there you go. When you're playing Civilization, so.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. Thank you so much for coming on here. I just had so much fun just sort of hanging out, chatting marketing, life, just hashing it out. And you're right. We'll have to have you back on here, do a debate series and go off on tangents and I do want to dive into boating at some point and sailing. So thanks again for coming on here.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm totally up for the debate session.
Ooh, I don't know if I am. I'm getting all nervous now. So
Ooh, you can be the moderator. You just
yeah,
ask everyone else to debate.
Oh yeah, great idea.
Yeah.
Like guys, let's just get along. No, Casey, this is a debate series. All right.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that fantastic. We'll definitely do that.
Awesome.
And for everyone listening, if you learned something here, and I know you did because I literally have notes out the wazoo I've written down, then share this with someone else. Be a thought leader to someone else, even just one person, by sharing this episode with them and seeing what they think and help encourage them with their career and that jungle gym of life. And so, yeah, thanks again, Katie. This is fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Casey, for having me on. It's been great.
Awesome. Thank you. And everyone else out there listening, this has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will catch you all next time.